We're in a city along the front line in eastern Ukraine. Russian airstrikes have hit a residential district. You can see behind me the fallout of this war. But Putin's war machine keeps running and running. How is this possible in the face of all the sanctions on Russia's most important asset, oil? Why can the Russian army continue to wage this war unhindered? Russian oil is fueling this war.
Nice to meet you. Das ist Vadim.
Hello.
Der hilft uns heute beim
He's going to help us interview Mr. Podolyak, a governmental advisor to Ukraine.
Berater in der Ukraine. Ja.
The Ukrainian government has been complaining for years that the oil sanctions are ineffective. They repeatedly point out loopholes in the embargo.
Санкции, к сожалению, в полном объеме не работают.
Unfortunately, the sanctions are not working adequately. Russia has found ways to circumvent them, including the sanctions against companies that sell raw materials on the international markets. Petroleum products are their most important source of income. They provide the primary financing for Russia's military-industrial complex and mass recruiting drives.
Those who help Russia evade the sanctions risk severe penalties, which is why the smugglers operate covertly. How does Russia manage to circumvent international oil sanctions? What are their methods? These are all questions we want to answer. But our research doesn't begin here in Ukraine, but on the Baltic Sea, not far from Germany. To follow the Russian oil route, you have to go to Denmark. The journey leads to a strait in the Baltic Sea, some 12 kilometers wide. ChatGPT, I'm going to the Danish island of Langeland, and I want to do some water sports. What are my options?
There's lots to do on Langeland. The island is known for its pristine nature and idyllic beaches. It's ideal for water sports like kayaking, which would suit your interests well. There are some important things to know about kayaking. Find out about the weather conditions in advance because calm water and little wind are ideal. Stay away from large boats and observe local regulations. Always wear a life vest and, if possible, lightweight waterproof clothes. Pack your phone in a waterproof.
Packe dein Handy in eine wasserdichte Hülle. Ein kleines Erdbeer.
Sieht aus wie Urlaub.
Looks like a great holiday. But there's more to it than kayaking. The Danish island of Langeland is behind me, and Lolland Island is ahead on the horizon. The strait between them is the Baltic Sea's maritime gateway to the world. We'll soon see what that has to do with Russia and sanctions.
Das werden wir uns gleich hier ansehen.
How does Russia get around the oil sanctions? My years of research have brought me back to the Baltic Sea and to the tankers carrying Russian oil. There's a tanker off to the left that's still empty. You can tell by the red line it's still riding high in the water. If we look to the right, we can see a fully loaded tanker sitting low in the water. You can see this every day between Langeland and Lolland. Oil continues to be the lifeline of Russia's economy and Putin's war chest. In October 2024 alone, more than 200 million euros per day flowed into Russia's coffers, just from the sale and marine transport of crude oil. Roughly another 170 million euros daily comes from the export of petroleum products like diesel and gasoline.
Ein Milliardenstrom, der
Billions are flowing unchecked and financing Putin's war chest every day, despite the severe sanctions imposed by the West. The EU has forbidden all imports of Russian crude oil and petroleum products by sea. In addition, the G7 nations and Australia have imposed a price cap of $60 per barrel. Any tanker transporting Russian oil sold for a higher price loses its insurance coverage and thus access to most ports worldwide. The intent is clearly to prevent the Kremlin from using its oil riches to finance the war. Anyone helping Russia to smuggle oil risks being included on the sanctions list. Most Western shipping firms have distanced themselves from Putin's oil, but Russia has responded.
Das ist die Turbo Voyager.
That's the Turbo Voyager, a typical example from Russia's shadow fleet.
Schattenflotte. Mehrmals
It's been renamed several times,
umfirmiert,
has dubious insurance coverage,
unklare Versicherungs-
obscure ownership structures,
unklare Eigentumsstrukturen,
and is full to the brim with Russian crude oil.
randvoll mit russischem Erdöl.
Now the tanker belongs to Radiating World Shipping, a sanctioned shell company based in Dubai specializing in Russian oil. The company's ships regularly traverse the Baltic Sea. On August 10, 2023, Indian sailor Vikram Patel was aboard one of the firm's ships. He's been missing ever since. He's supposed to have gone overboard somewhere in the Baltic off Denmark. His mother has agreed to an interview for the first time. This case shows that those behind the oil smuggling want to disclose nothing and will do anything to obscure their activities.
He had a friendly soul and was a very good man. He was the breadwinner of our family and took care of all the family affairs. We depended on him for everything, financial and otherwise.
The family of the missing sailor has repeatedly demanded information from the shipping company.
We've asked them several times to tell us where he was last seen, so we would know exactly where he disappeared. We've tried often, but the company refuses to help us.
Kamala Patel has taken legal action in India to find out what really happened to her son. The conclusions filed in the investigative report are contradictory, sometimes claiming that Vikram was sick and taking drugs, other times speculating that he had gone for a cigarette, lost his balance, and plunged into the Baltic Sea.
If he wasn't well, they should have informed us or taken him to hospital. They should have informed us. Why weren't we informed? He'd had a medical exam and he was fine when he went on board.
For Vikram Patel's family, the search for the truth is a grueling ordeal. They want to find out what happened, but those responsible are concealed behind an impenetrable corporate structure. According to court documents, the ship is managed by a subsidiary of the Russian Lukoil Group. But searching for it in international ship databases is futile, one of many inconsistencies. The tanker's insurance company, which would have to pay in the event of an accident, is also questionable. The Russian Ingolstadt insurance company is also on the sanctions list. Every trail ends in a labyrinth of obscurity. Vikram Patel was a sailor on a tanker that circumvents sanctions, transports Russian oil, and operates in a network of deception and concealment. Russia, of course, refuses to comply with these sanctions and has built up its own shadow, or ghost fleet. We got to see it firsthand in Estonia, at the other end of the Baltic Sea. In the summer of 2023, we traveled there to take a closer look at Russia's shadow fleet. The Perespeya Peninsula is a natural paradise. But something else lurks on the horizon. Putin's secret shadow tankers.
Wir wollen rausfahren auf die Ostsee.
We're planning to sail out on the Baltic Sea, where many old tankers are waiting to enter Russian ports. Their mission is to transport sanctioned Russian oil across the world's oceans. The decrepit tankers pose an enormous environmental threat to the entire Baltic Sea. Our skipper is already waiting for us at the port.
Sure. Here and here. And then this needs to be on the legs.
Okay.
We have called to the Coast Guard, so they know that we are heading there and having a day over there. So I hope everything goes safe.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's a good feeling.
A storm is brewing, and the small boat fights its way through the waves. The sea is choppy.
I made a call to authorities who patrol here with the boats. And they say that most of them are waiting for the job to head to Ustluga.
Ustluga, they go to Ustluga.
Shadow tankers ply the international waters off Estonia, waiting for permission to enter one of 3 Russian ports. Their destinations are the oil terminals of Ustluga, St. Petersburg, and Primorsk.
As far as I understand, it's all about the sanctions. The more sanction came, the more the number of the boats raised.
Each of the many orange dots on the display represents a tanker, which we can follow and identify using this ship tracking service. It's an indispensable tool for tracking down Putin's shadow fleet. The first ships lie at anchor ahead of us, and we soon discover our first subject of interest. Its origin is emblazoned in large letters on the bridge. SCF is the name of a sanctioned Russian shipping firm. This ship is no longer allowed to make port in Europe. Now it's waiting here on the Baltic Sea for permission to dock. After Russia invaded Ukraine, it outsourced many of these ships to shell companies. SCF stands for Sovcomflot, Russia's largest fleet operator. The US has placed the Sakhalin Island, along with 13 other tankers, on its sanctions list. According to US authorities, the aim was to target the Shadow Fleet's covert activities. The Sakhalin Island is a typical shadow tanker. The 20-year-old ship, like around 100 others in the SCF fleet, has been sold back and forth repeatedly between shell companies. The true owners are almost impossible to identify. This concealment tactic is a hallmark of the Shadow Fleet. Shortly after, the next shadow tanker appears. At the time of filming, its last safety inspection had already been some time before.
This is
the Bex Lily, built in 2005. It was last inspected in 2020. The ships should normally be inspected once or twice a year. The Bex Lily is typical of a shadow tanker. Within a year, the ship's name had been changed. Its flag is also constantly being changed, and its insurance status is vague. A database search by the International Group of P&I Clubs, which insures 90% of all merchant ships, turns up nothing.
That's the
Limo, built in 2000, so more than 20 years old. It was last inspected in June 2019. You can see with the naked eye that the ship is in very poor condition, badly rusted. And this ship carries Russian oil through the Baltic to the high seas. The Limo is registered in Cameroon, a country known for its lax ship inspections.
Just had someone filming us.
Yeah, there's somebody filming.
Left side, yes.
The Limo has been registered under 6 names. Most recently, known at the time as the Crete Island, it appeared in US court documents. In January 2019, oil was pumped from an Iranian tanker onto the Crete Island in a clear violation of the Western embargo against Iran. Iran has been circumventing sanctions for years, and in doing so, has essentially provided a model for Russia. In the midst of our journey between the tankers, something unexpected suddenly appears in the Gulf of Finland. Interesting what can show up here in the Baltic Sea. That's a submarine. The Russian sub is moving slowly eastward. And there's a warship on the horizon. The Russian frigate Kazanez was built in the 1980s at the Peine shipyard in Wolgast, Germany. It shows how important this sea route is for Russia. The oil is carried from here across the Baltic Sea to the Atlantic. Now the Estonian Coast Guard is behind us. There's a lot of ship traffic here today, including one ship that has already violated the embargo against Iran. In the interest of safety, we turn back. The trail began in the Gulf of Finland and leads to a regime that has known how to skillfully evade sanctions for decades.
Leaked emails
and documents published by the opposition website Wiki Iran show that Iranian front companies are involved in transporting Russian oil too. The Remi is an example. Instructions and cargo manifests show how the Iranian shadow tanker docked at the Russian oil port of Murmansk in December 2023. The documents prove what it was carrying and its destination, China, one of the largest buyers of Russian oil. Since invading Ukraine, Russia has found an ally in Iran. Iran is an aggressive military force in the region, brutally repressing the opposition, especially women demanding their freedom. Although Iran has been severely weakened by airstrikes from Israel and the US, Russia is still attacking Ukraine with drones based on Iranian designs. To circumvent the sanctions, Russia has not only acquired a shadow fleet, but is also using a very simple trick to conceal the oil's origin. We saw how this works in Greece a few months after the war began. We went to Greece in the summer of 2022, just under 6 months after Russia invaded Ukraine. Ship tracking data we had evaluated showed that something fishy was going on out here at sea. We headed to the small port town of Githeo, where we could follow the trail of Russian oil. Githeo lies on the Laconian Gulf, which became something of a pilgrimage site for Russia's shadow fleet in the first year of the war. On the ship tracking charts, we followed more and more tankers from Russian Baltic ports and the Black Sea entering international waters off the Greek coast. At the port, we hired a skipper and his boat to take us out to the tankers. It later became clear that we could not entirely trust him. At first, our skipper seemed open and talkative. He willingly shared how a local shipping company regularly took black fenders out to the tankers, seen here. Occasionally, he too went to foreign ships for the company.
Russian tanker.
Yeah, Russian.
All Russian.
Yeah.
About 8 nautical miles from the mainland, 3 tankers lay ahead of us. One ship had black fenders on its side. Apparently, we had been noticed. Because our skipper got a call. We heard every word. Our expedition had come to an end. Back on land, we drove south on the narrow coastal road following the tankers. From a hill, we could see the Mediterranean and the tankers in the distance, crowded together on the water. Those are the same ships we saw this morning. They've paired up, 4 ships in total. We suspect that oil is being pumped from one ship to another in order to prevent the oil from being traced to its origin. It's easiest to do that when it's being carried in a tanker that hasn't come from a Russian port. We're making a second attempt. This time, we want more than just speculation. To get hard evidence, we need to move closer. Today we're on a faster boat, with a chance of getting closer. On the chart, I can see 2 tankers that have come very close to each other and have reduced their speed. We set course for the first pair of tankers. When they come into view, we launch a drone. The ships are joined by hoses, and a telltale sheen of oil glistens on the water's surface. We're pretty close now, and can see very clearly how the whole thing works. You can see the black fenders there. They come from the STS operator in the Githio port. You can see the hoses running from one ship to the other. Ship-to-ship transfer, or STS, sounds harmless. Normally, oil is pumped from a larger tanker to a smaller one in order to reach ports that are too small for the giant vessels. But in the Laconian Gulf, oil is being transferred from one tanker to another in order to conceal its true origin. On an Iranian opposition website, I find leaked emails from Iranian front companies. They show that Russia's partner, Iran, has long been using STS in the Persian Gulf to smuggle sanctioned oil. Price lists from Iranian STS operators show that 5-figure sums are paid for such secret activities. A few nautical miles further, we encounter the next ship-to-ship transfer. The ship, bearing the logo of the Russian SCF State Shipping Company, was last seen in a Russian oil port in the Baltic Sea. We've just circled around and seen that the one vessel is transferring oil to the other. It'll be virtually impossible for anyone to trace the origin of the oil once it arrives at a port. The The leaked documents show that Russia uses the same methods as Iran. Russia uses STS transfers to conceal the routes the oil is taken. But smugglers can even make entire ships disappear from the radar.
A leaked
email from the Iranian front company to a smuggler tanker reveals how it's done. Khor Fakkan is an inconspicuous port in the United Arab Emirates, 70 miles from the Iranian mainland. AIS stands for Automatic Identification System. It transmits ship information and the ship's exact location, thereby helping to prevent accidents. But this is where simulation software comes into play. It sends a false signal, making it appear that the sea opera is still off the coast of the Emirates. In reality, it has set course for Iran. With its AIS signal switched off, the ship takes on board sanctioned butane gas in the Iranian port of Asaluye.
The
rest is straightforward. The tanker returns to its original anchorage where the AIS simulator is turned off and the real AIS is turned back on. It's like the shadow tanker had never left at all. Samir Madani tracks shadow tankers on behalf of insurance companies and international organizations. He first started seeing AIS manipulation years ago.
And what we noticed was that vessels were switching off their AIS transponders after exiting the Suez Canal from the southbound into the Mediterranean when they were delivering oil to Syria. So this would be Iranian oil. Then later on, what happened was in 2020, we started noticing that vessels were not only switching off their transponders for prolonged periods, but that they were actually misrepresenting their locations. And that is called spoofing, or AIS spoofing. And the way that works is that the vessel's transponder is still broadcasting the data, but it is broadcasting a fake set of latitude and longitude coordinates. So therefore, it can say, for instance, that the vessel is maybe off the coast of Angola, but it is actually on the other side of the Atlantic in Venezuela.
The AIS manipulation shows how crucial it is not to rely solely on location data. In summer of 2024, we were still tracking the tankers. Russian oil was being transferred in a new region. Greece has closed the Laconian Gulf, but Putin's shadow fleet has found a new rendezvous point not far away. The tankers are meeting in international waters off Malta, and we want to see what's really happening. Herd's Bank, only 10 miles off the Maltese coast, has become the new transfer point for Russian oil. For weeks, we monitor the area using ship tracking and document the covert transfers. Most of the tankers come directly from Russian oil ports in the Baltic Sea, loaded and ready for transfer. In Malta, we want to know above all who's profiting by concealing the origin of Russian oil.
Es bedarf natürlich auch immer
Operators or companies are always needed to supply the equipment, like the black fenders that are placed between the ship's sides. When they sail out, it's a sign an STS is going to take place somewhere. Time to set out. In the morning, the STS operator's boat is on Herd's Bank, presumably to deliver equipment for an upcoming ship-to-ship transfer to one of the waiting tankers. We sail out to the anchorages where the tankers are waiting. The STS operator's destination is the Marta 1, a tanker we've long been watching and which has been drifting off Malta for months. We arrive at Herd's Bank, but with no internet access offshore, it's difficult to find the Marta 1.
The problem is I'm off now here.
Okay.
That's a screenshot.
That's why we don't see them.
Yeah. That's
Okay,
a
this is
screenshot.
why.
The last position was anywhere here in this area.
We weaved through the tankers. That should be the Marta. We finally found the Marta 1, but we were too late.
Die Marta 1.
The Marta 1 is a kind of floating fuel depot.
Tanklager seit
We've been seeing it here off Malta on charts for 5 months.
vor Malta liegen.
It's made countless STS transfers,
Und was man jetzt noch
but all we can see now are the black fenders attached to the ship's sides. Back at sea, we look around to see what other ships are at anchor. What we find is the Melogi.
Der nächste Tanker.
The next tanker fits the profile perfectly. It transports Russian oil, and the data shows that it was at Ust-Luga, the Russian oil port on the Baltic Sea. Now we see it off Malta. And a little in-depth research finds reports that it's transported sanctioned oil. The tanker was allegedly part of a criminal network with ties to Germany, stretching from Venezuela to Russia and China. The Melogi smuggled sanctioned oil from Venezuela via elaborate routes. If that's not enough, the ringleaders supposedly supplied Western technology to Russian arms producers. A company in Hamburg was alleged to be behind it all. The US indictment from fall 2022 lists 2 men as joint owners. Artyom Us, son of a powerful Russian oligarch, and Yuri Oryekhov, a Russian businessman based in Germany. The indictment quotes SMS messages from their communications in which they give detailed instructions for the tanker. The content was familiar. With no satellite reception, the tankers carrying the sanctioned oil can't be located. The method is common among smugglers, as the Iran leaks have already shown. The Hamburg case also shows that a great deal of money is at stake in the oil embargo business. Just this case alone, $33 million. Yuri Oryekhov was arrested in Germany. Investigators were initially able to apprehend his accomplice, Artyom Us, in Italy. But the oligarch's son managed to escape and was mysteriously able to flee to Russia. There are companies that openly and visibly profit from the trade in Russian oil. Today, we're able to observe them in action. Yesterday we sailed to the Marta, but had bad luck. Shortly before we arrived, the STS was cancelled. The black fenders, those balloons, are still hanging there on the side of the ship. Maybe we'll have better luck today. We're going out again to look for the Marta. This time, we catch the Marta 1 in the act, pumping oil to a second tanker. We had seen such ship-to-ship transfers in the Laconian Gulf. Through the drone's camera, we can see fenders and hoses. The question is, who facilitates these transfers? Who actually profits from them? We've learned from the Iranian leaks that a lot of money is involved. But there must also be people in Malta profiting handsomely from the sanctions and Russia's oil. We don't have to wait long for an answer. We've only just set off when suddenly a supply boat approaches.
Neben uns ist die
The Sea Express 3 has appeared next to us. The company earns money from the sanctions by taking fenders to and from the ships. Let's follow them and see where they go. As expected, the Sea Express sails to the Marta 1. What follows is something we've been observing for months. Boats belonging to a Maltese company supplying the tankers with STS equipment, helping them circumvent sanctions. We return to port and search for the supply boats and the black fenders belonging to the ship-to-ship operator. We discover the Sea Express in a side channel. At the heavily guarded entrance, we ask for the company head, explaining that we want to ask about the STS operations and sanctions. No one is willing to talk to us on camera. We've also sent a list of questions to the STS firm on Malta. We're still waiting for a response. To finance Putin's war on Ukraine, his shadow fleet carries oil across the high seas, engaging in secret oil transfers and hiding its tracks through AIS manipulation. This poses a danger to both people and the environment. In its annual shipping risk report, Munich-based industrial insurer Allianz Commercial warns of the dangers posed by the shadow fleet. Since Russia's attack on Ukraine and the oil sanctions, shadow tankers have been involved in at least 50 high seas incidents. These incidents include fires like this and engine failures. This footage from summer 2023 shows a tanker loaded with Russian oil drifting off the German island Rügen in the Baltic Sea. They also include collisions, like this one, where a shadow tanker with its AIS switched off collided with another tanker in the South China Sea in June 2024. Military jets circle over the shadow fleet in the Baltic Sea off Denmark. In November 2024, signal flares were fired at a German military helicopter from a Russian shadow tanker. The situation could explode at any time. Just a few kilometers north of Langelen, tankers pass through one of Europe's most important trade routes, which runs under the bridge over the Great Belt. Most Russian oil exports are transported via the Baltic Sea, mainly on shadow tankers that evade inspection. But in mid-December 2024, the EU took action, adding 52 ships to the sanction list, bringing the total to 79. This is still only a fraction of the shadow fleet, which is estimated to number in the hundreds or even thousands of tankers. Just how inadequate the list is became apparent shortly after the new sanctions were adopted. In late 2024, we were after a highly suspicious, heavily guarded tanker near the port city of Porvoo in the Gulf of Finland. Tensions were running high, and our boat caught the attention of the Coast Guard.
Hello.
The officials checked our passports, then allowed us to continue. We came within 500 meters of the shadow tanker.
Also wir sind jetzt 40 Kilometer von Helsinki entfernt.
We're off the coast 40 kilometers from Helsinki, with the Eagle S behind us.
Ein russischer Schattentanker
A Russian shadow tanker that left Ust-Luga just before Christmas, carrying 35,000 tons of gasoline, and has now been detained by the Finnish Coast Guard. The ship is suspected of severing a power line. The charges are serious. The crew is alleged to have dragged an anchor dozens of kilometers across the seabed, destroying the Estlink 2 power cable connecting Finland and Estonia. If confirmed, this would be one of the first documented cases of these tankers being used not only to transport sanctioned oil, but also as a weapon in a possible hybrid war against the West. The Eagle S meets all the criteria of a shadow tanker, but is conspicuously absent from the EU sanctions list. This is an oversight. Brussels has since announced that it will add further shadow tankers to the list of banned vessels. Russia is believed to be using its shadow fleet to wage a covert war against the West. For around 2.5 years, we tracked Putin's shadow fleet, only to end up where it all begins, on the Baltic Sea, the most important trade route for Russian oil. Our research has shown how Russia is circumventing the sanctions. The West needs to be consistent and cooperate together so that the sanctions serve their purpose, to finally end the war in Ukraine.